So, this podcast is made possible thanks to the generous people who support us on Patreon. If you're enjoying the chats that we're doing, if they're improving your practice or you're just finding them interesting, head to patreon.com/the Forest School Podcast. You can support us from as little as £2 a month, and it really does make a huge amount of difference to keeping the lights on, keeping our bills covered, and us being able to find the time to keep interviewing these cool people, read these incredible books, and keep providing this resource to the community. Thanks so much. Bye. Welcome to the Forest School Podcast, a show where I, Lewis, and my co-host, Wem Southerner, set out to explore a shared pedagogy. It's a space where cerebral thinking matters more than craptivities, where educational purpose outweighs pretty resources, and where inclusion is more than just a buzzword. Join us as we overthink the trivial, deep dive into whatever sparks our dopamine, and reflect on what it means to truly hold space for others, holistically and without judgment. Thanks for being here. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Hello, have you got a random fact for me today?
I don't have a random. Can I talk to you about my busy month that's going to start? Because when we put this out, It will be the start of my busy month. And,
okay.
I'm going to say this with all of the gratitude in the world. It's a very busy month. I'm very grateful for the things that I'm going to be doing, but it's going to be a slightly tiring month. So next month I start a new round of level 3 training with new people, doing it on Sundays. I'm interested to see how that plays out. Haven't done it on Sundays for a long while. That will be quite interesting. I am going away. This is real personal. We'll forget that the podcast is on just personal, me and you right now. We're going away next weekend. Me and my wife are going away for the first time ever. Our children have gone away on things like Scout Camp, but we've always been in the house and could go and get them. We are going to London.
You're going up that London?
Going to London. I'm going to go and see the RS. Do you know when they do films and they put the orchestra goes underneath the film and goes like,
yeah,
right? So the RSPB is putting on a documentary about birds, obviously, and there's an orchestra and G4. Do you remember G4? They're weird music group. They were in the X Factor, four guys that do operatic singing, but they are singing under this documentary, thing about birds.
Are they? When you said that, I imagined that they were going to do that thing where you turn the volume down on the TV and then you do the voices of the characters yourself.
So
are they being the birds? They're like, "Hello, I love you. Do you want to look at my nest? Yes, I love that nest."
I've been describing it as bird orchestra. And I'm obviously imagining I get there and there's somebody playing like a seagull, like a trumpet. Somebody's got a very low bass swan where they've kind of got the beak in them. And that's the swan if you play it right.
All I can imagine now is because my friend sent me a message that I was very grateful for yesterday that said, "Tip, I think there might be a dead buzzard or other bird of prey in the lay-by down the road. You know, the lay-by, that lay-by there, in case you want it." And I was like, do I ever? So I went there and I was like, okay, well, if it's unidentified death, then I'm gonna have to report that, and I'm not, don't touch the fluey bird. If it's roadkill, then I'm having that. I'm 100% having that. And it was a juvenile seagull roadkill with its head all mashed up and full of maggots. So I hope that their bird orchestra isn't like that. So I didn't take it. I left it. Where it was. I've already got a seagull's wing. I don't need.
I found a dead seagull in my road this week, and we did report it to. It's not DEFRA, but we did report it somewhere because it was just fine but dead.
Oh God!
So we did the right thing, and then they phoned and were like, "Where is the bird? We might need to come get it." And we were like, "Oh, in our wheelie bin." That's kind of where we put it. Anyway, it's all fine. Anyway, the other thing that I need to say that I'm doing this week, this month, is I'm driving 4 and a bit hours up to Wirral the Wirral? Is it one of those places that's got a the? For the first FSA roadshow up there. I'm going up there for the day.
So tell me about the FSA roadshows and the difference between that and the big conferences.
So the big conference couldn't happen this year. That was purely administrative, couldn't find the right place, couldn't find the thing. So what the FSA is doing is 4 roadshows, 2 in the autumn and 2 in the spring, in slightly more spread out geographic locations, because there was a feeling that the conference was very like central or like
it
eastern,
was Essex, wasn't it, for a long time?
and that's kind of tricky for a lot of people. So it's like, okay, all these local spots can go up. So they're only a day. There's no camping involved. You're just in and out. Few workshops that are like, I think I chose from like 4 or 5. So it's much more condensed, and it's more like a mini conference in one place. But I'm very excited to go. And then there's another one in October. I want to say it's in Berkshire, and I should know this, but I don't. But if you go on the FSA website, then they're all on there. So I'm going to try and go to that one as well. I'm going to be driving my truck all around to the country because I've got the community need at the moment. I've got the I need to be with forest school people. I will drive for 4 hours to go and achieve that. I'm going to go and kick Lily Horseman in the leg. That is what I'm going to go and do. Nice. She knows it's coming.
What kind of workshops are you doing? What sort of topics are they?
What topics are they? So I'm doing one on, there was one on soapstone I didn't go for, but it did look very interesing. I'm doing one on coil basket making, that kind of roundy.
Oh, yeah.
There was some slightly more, whether we always say there's like cerebral ones and practical ones. And so there were cerebral ones, which I chose not to do. I can't remember what the topics of them were now. I think there was one to do with planning, but again, I'm going to have a look. I'm doing Lily's, which is about nature connection. And I'm doing do you remember Feral Science? They were at one of the other conferences, and I'm doing Dangerous Toys, which is like boomerangs and slingshots. And, I feel like I'm driving 4 hours. I shall throw a boomerang and then I shall drive back. But I'm very excited to get up there and meet some. Yeah. And also, although, and this is the best use of the word, to add to, I promise listeners, we will get on with the podcast in a minute. To add to the busy month is that we are all going, you, me, and one of other people. We're going this month to redacted information. We're going to a place that we can't talk about where we're going to yet, because they've told me that it must be embargoed. It must be embargoed.
It's very exciting.
It's quite exciting. So we got off to there to another place, which is I'm very excited for when we get to talk about that.
Have you chosen your outfit yet?
So I was, I think we can give away that it is slightly more posh than going to the woods. So I was trying on various, I was, okay. Again, this is just me and you. We're not recording this. I was like, I've got various kilts. I can't not wear a kilt now. My legs won't fit in any of the trousers that I have. So I was putting on kilts, and then I was like, I've got a smart shirt, and my partner was there and was there to sort of do check in and go like, that's not the thing. And there was a point where I had the kilt on and I tucked the shirt in, but I hadn't done the shirt buttons. So I was wearing a big white billowy shirt and a kilt. And there was a moment where I kind of wanted to go like, I think I might stand on a heath somewhere and just kind of, I can feel my chest expanding. Glorious day.
I think you need to wear that with that hat you've got, that furry hat with the horns.
It looks like a Muppet.
Yeah. Like
my big cow hat one. Okay. Yeah.
That would look really good. Please.
I mean, the testosterone would be flowing, wouldn't it?
Please wear that. And I'll wear something equally mad, but very different.
Great.
I can't think what that is right now. Yeah, I've got an exciting month because I get to start my PhD at Bristol University and register for that and stuff. I got an email today, so that is also very exciting to enter the world of academia once again.
So tell me about starting a PhD. Do you start full tilt in like, let's do some lectures, or do you start with like, hey, we're going to show you around the quad, we're going to show you we're going to take you to freshers, right?
I don't really know yet. I think you can do that latter stuff if you want to. I think there's a lot of like orientation stuff, which is like optional. And then I know that there is a lunch with just the people who are doing education PhDs, and there's 15 of us or 12 of us. So that will be good. So I don't know yet.
Nice. That will either be an incredible meeting, or very quickly you'll go, oh dear, someone's going to turn up and be like, so I'm doing my thesis on why we should have more Skinnerism in education and how it's an incredible resource and society and
I very much doubt that. I mean, maybe. We'll see. I'll let you know.
Well, I'll tell you what then. Let's get into the episode.
Let's do it.
Because I think on the theme of resilience, we're talking about long-term resilience. I came across people close to me know that I've been reading Looby McNamara's book, Cultural Emergence, for an incredibly long time. And while it is incredibly joyful, it is like reading through treacle. I've loved every second of it, but it's not a quick, like, got it. Oh my God, yeah, love this. Looby has agreed to come on to the podcast in a couple of weeks and do things, which is very exciting. But I wanted to talk about one specific bit in Looby's book, where she's talking about types of resilience. I have to admit that. So I've been working in education now for like 15 years, because I'm an old man. And I had never really thought about there being types of resilience in the way that this book talks about, because this book talks about, I'll talk about why and then I'll come back. So it talks about 4 types of resilience. It's called recovery resilience, adaptive resilience, transformative resilience, and spreading resilience. And I was really interested in this because I don't know, before we go into what those things are, like, I don't know what your experience was, but my experience of resilience came specifically from a scheme that was in schools called Building Learning Powers. And it was about teaching kids the like meta skills of learning. So right. That teachers could then be like, oh, this person did great resilience today. This person did excellent teamwork. Wow, what a great use of like resource, to give them a language so that kids could build up an idea of like, how do I learn, rather than just like, I know about the Greeks.
So, and was that one of those like bought in kind of schemes that teachers follow and
absolutely
do the worksheet?
Yeah. Not necessarily do the worksheet, but like it was training for teachers, and it was about how you teach and, the words in your classroom and how it was a slight sidestep from like, don't praise people to like, why don't you praise that they stuck with it rather than like that they got all the answers right. It's that kind of sidestep. But I think in all of my time of teaching, I'd only ever come across resilience as with like one definition. And I had to look up today what the definition of resilience was, because when I think about it, I think about like synonyms might be like grit or like determination, like not giving up, and maybe even going into realms of like powering through, and like just kind of maybe relentless is in that soup of words as well. Is that
100%? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So that's interesting, because I also wanted to look it up today and didn't, and then forgot that I wanted to do that. So what was the dictionary definition?
So this is interesting that I found 2 definitions in the Oxford dictionary. So number 1 is the ability of people or things to recover quickly after something unpleasant, such as shock or injury. I think the important words in there are it just says recover quickly. That's the definition, just recovering. The second definition is the ability of a substance to return to its original shape after it's been bent, stretched, or pressed, i.e. wool is very resilient as a material, right? And I found that very interesting, because I would have, again, taken that kind of idea of resilience as like, it's about like not, almost like hard-headed, like you're not changing your ideas. You are, you're just, rigid is a good word,
you can't be
eroded.
Isn't it? Like you're tough. Yeah, I am totally with you. And I had exactly the same thoughts. And then I had issues with those thoughts. It's almost like that's become a kind of cultural meaning of resilience right now, especially as education is concerned, which I've always had issue with. But so I wanted to look up what the actual meaning was, same as you, for that reason, to be like, now I've got evidence about why all this chat about like kids needing to be resilient in schools is a load of old poo-poo. And it's interesting because you sent me you've shown me a bit of Looby's book about this, and so I can see these 4 definitions as well. And on that theme, she's quoting someone called Chris Johnstone, who I'd like to read more about, and his 4 types of resilience. And they're using the word bouncing a lot, bouncing back, bouncing with, bouncing forwards, bouncing outwards, which again kind of harks back to that like materials being resistant, like being able to go back to their original shape, and the humans recovering after something adverse happens, and being very elastic and flexible and not being damaged by a thing, but being able to like I'm doing a body movement, kind of like a bit like if you're being thrown a ball and you catch it and
You
move
take
back a
some of the
little
force
bit.
out, don't you? Yeah,
Exactly.
and then you've got it. Yeah.
Return, as opposed to this more maybe current meaning being bandied around about, as you say, being hard like rock, not being able to be pushed over, like being tough. So it's really interesting to think of it like that, and to actually, I think it's really important to understand, because there is this kind of culture at the moment, especially if we're talking about education and kids in schools, which, yes, gives this, basically it's like code for eat shit. And that really,
Yeah. Knuckle under.
just eat shit, just be resilient, just continue in this like fucked up system. So I'm getting really sweary today. Whether that be the education system you're in, or like late stage capitalism, or fucking the climate crisis, it's just like, be resilient, just like, which means ignore everything, put your blinkers on and just carry on doing what you're doing. Like, that is not resilience. That is something different that many people want us to do, or want kids to do. And yeah, I kind of wrote a little bit of a list of before I looked in the dictionary, of what I thought resilience kind of if we're talking about like education systems or community systems, what I personally kind of align with in terms of the meaning of resilience. And
sure, hit me with your list.
I had strength in community, power in the face of oppression, a cycle of action and relaxing that is sustainable. Which is kind of interesting. And then I wrote, a resilient system or culture doesn't burn people out. And I think that was the key for me in terms of like this current cultural meaning of resilience, is just like, carry the heckins on until you burn out, or until somebody burns out. The person supporting you to carry on burns out. Whereas a resilient system is sustainable, and it's a cycle, so that you can carry on, because it's all very well to go carry on, but if
I think there's something
is in tiny little brackets, that's bullshit.
I think there's a nugget in here, which is that, like, have you heard that phrase? I've heard it sort of creeping into culture more and more, which is the idea of like, if someone is brave, that doesn't mean that they are like not scared of anything. It means that they are scared of stuff, and they still do the thing. That's what being brave is. And I think there's a parallel there between that and resilient, and talking about this thing of like bouncing, and in your list you just had like resting, which is this idea that I think the way that a lot of educators talk about resilience involves like, that like hard-headed, but it's like a shrugging off is what's resilient, rather than being like, actually, if you get hit and to be like knocked down by something and then get back up is resilient. But it's almost like the way we talk about it is like, we'd rather you didn't do the knock down bit, we'd rather you just kept going. Whereas like, again, in this bit, in this couple of pages that Looby's got in her book, and it's talking about this idea of like, it's going to involve like resilience. It's like that balance bit, isn't it? Like, resilience has to involve pause, and it has to involve rest, and it has to involve like feeling a bit shit, or like being like, oh my god, this is really a fucking hard and I need to stop, and then coming back into it. But I think that the way that people talk about resilience a lot of the time that I see is just this like, if you could not do that rest bit, please, if you could just keep going, like, we don't, if you could just shrug it off, but bulletproof, ping, 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 ping.
And don't have any feelings about it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you wouldn't describe somebody who, for example, became very emotional about things often, but carried on doing the thing. Probably our current culture wouldn't describe them as being resilient. They would say the opposite. They go, oh yeah, they're not very resilient, are they though? Look, they keep getting upset. And it's like, that's not the point. Like, that's way more resilient to feel the feelings, have the response to the difficult thing, and carry on doing it, or adapt yourself to carry on doing it,
Yeah. And that's where in the book that it's talking about this kind of like adaptive, one of the types is adaptive resilience, and that idea of like coming back in a different way, it is resilient, or coming back as a different thing is resilience. It's not about, it's different to like, I got knocked over and I stand straight back up again and I'm running just like I was before. It's like getting knocked over and then you get back up and you go, I'm going to try skipping, because skipping is now, more advantageous, and not seeing that as like, oh, you gave up on walking, did you? oh, that's not very resilient, to be like, you know, like, and that I mean, I would have held this myself until I've read this and kind of gone, that idea that, like, yeah, to be resilient means to come back to things exactly the same way. You know, and we see it all the time, don't we? Like, oh, they were so resilient with the fire lighting. They just stayed there. They just did rather than like, you know, if someone goes like, I tried to do fire lighting with the ferro rod strikers, wasn't going. And then they decided to go for like a Bic lighter and get the fire going. That's resilient, because there's a type of resilience because you've come back with a different method. But whether we would see it in the same way, and also whether we would like, maybe that's a bad example because you've changed the result. I'm less confident in the example.
I don't know. I'd say that's adaptive, isn't it? If you are talking about resilience at firelighting, that you could describe as adaptive resilience, because you are still trying to do the thing which is like the fire. You're just trying to do it in a different way. Whereas perhaps not being resilient at specifically lighting a fire would be trying, giving up, and just not trying again, even though you actually really did need a fire, or it was going to, you know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And acknowledging also that pause, because that's one of the things that I think forest school has in abundance, is the ability, like, if we can really lock into, if more practitioners could lock into this type of view of resilience, to be like, that someone comes back and tries firelighting again the next week is resilient.
That's exactly what I was
That's a different resilience to, like, it's almost like separating resilience and perseverance. I'm not sure whether that's quite the thing of separating those two out and going like, different words, and we're going to use them in different ways, because persevering would, I think, be closer to that definition of sitting there and going and going and going. I'm not going to do anything else until I've got there. Whereas resilience might be like, someone is more resilient if they're like, I am so unbelievably frustrated right now. It's all that I can do to, and maybe I do throw the fire rod across the ground, but to take that, to go process, to then come back, that's resilience. And that's what we've got the space to do in a long-term setting, right?
Yeah. And also, like, the thought I had about community, like, I think the current view of resilience puts it all on the individual. I think it's part of this, like, individualism that we're going through at the moment. Whereas if we view it more holistically and more in a community way, then it's not just up to that person to have resilience. It's not like their fault if they don't have resilience. It's like, well, how does the community or the group help with that resilience? Which again is forest school, isn't it? Good forest school anyhow, is, okay, well, this person's struggling at this and we're not seeing them being able to thrive in this particular way or in this particular area. So how can we as a community become more resilient and responsive so that they can become more resilient? It's almost like looking at the whole community as an organism that needs resilience at the same time as looking at the individual, rather than just narrowing down on each individual and going, oh, what can they do or not do? Oh, that's a bit of a shame, isn't it? You know, and forest school is about
and approaching that resilience in different ways, because if you've got somebody that, like, because sometimes responsibilities in a community do kind of fall to one person, maybe because they're the only person with the skill set, or they're the only person with access to something. But there are ways to make that community more resilient. I think you can either try and support that individual by going like, what can we take off the plate so you've got more bandwidth for this? Or how do we do it so the meetings are more spread out for you, because we appreciate that this is a lot of work. There's another, you know, strand to making that community more resilient, which is to find another person or more people to take those roles and to go, right, well, you know, as much as this might be trickier to begin with, the community as a whole, as an organism, like you're saying, is more resilient if 3 people know how to do the setting up rather than just one person, and expanding that out and being like, but you can do all of those strands at the same time, you know. And there's probably other strands to community resilience that I just haven't sat with for long enough to be like, oh yeah, but you know, that is how you do the stuff.
I made a note about that as well, about resilient groups from Looby's book. She's saying when groups are resilient when they're not reliant on one person, and transparency is really key. So transparency in roles, and I think this is really key to forest school and very appropriate to our work together and to lots of people, I'm sure, who are working either by themselves or in a very small team, that so much is not transparent just because of the nature of like the pigeonhole that our work is put into and the finances of it realistically as well. You know, it's just like tiny little organizations or one person working by themselves, and our businesses it's really hard for our businesses to be resilient in the economic climate and for roles to be transparent, because there are so many forest school practitioners doing fuckloads at home and just running on this wheel of like preparation and clearing away and marketing and all those things. And there is often no second person or third person or fourth person. And even if there is, making a role transparent is really hard. And like, that's something that we've been through like in the last year, isn't it? In terms of, you know, me having to step away, and then, you know, already we always had this kind of vibe that like, oh, it's kind of easier to keep it just the two of us. We've tried with other people, but it's quite tricky. And there are flip sides. You've got more control and you've got more creative freedom, and you can stay true to your ethos if it's just, you know, if it's a smaller team or just you. But then the flip side of that is the sustainability, the, you know, burnout, all those things. So it was really good to be reminded of that. And I wondered, a kind of question came up for me, and I wondered if you could think of examples of resilience being built. So not necessarily, again, not kind of thinking, oh yeah, that this is resilient, or here's an example of it, it was perfect, but like of resilience being built that you've observed, or we might have observed, like either within a group or community or within like business. Do you know what I mean? Like, can you think of examples where resilience has been grown?
I think I have this. I think I can, but I think it's something that we have already talked about before. And I don't know that we'd ever talked about it before on the podcast, but I think I've probably said to you a few times over the years that policies are by and large scars from companies. I must have said this to you before, where I'm like, if you read a policy about something that looks like it's out of the fucking blue, you know that company had some shit going on, right? And there's some TV shows have got like whole episodes about this, where it's like, oh, you haven't lived unless there's been a sign put up because of you, and that kind of vibe of like, you know, you can look back through and be like,
true. I was somewhere the other day, which it was a really weird, very particular sign about,
and you're like, I want to know that story.
You do this thing, this might happen, just to let you know. And it's like, who would do that? Do you know, I can't even remember where it was, but somewhere like, you know, an open farm, and it's like, if you feed the pig a gherkin, it may bite you, just to let you know. Fair warning.
And you want to know the story, right? You want to hear the thing and be like, oh, that's an interesting, you know.
Sorry,
No, but this is the example that I want to talk about, is that like, so those metaphors and like, you know, if we're talking about like from like a clean language point of view, where the metaphors help you understand the person's inner world, that like calling them scars was how I related to those difficult moments. I was like, and in that narrow definition of resilience, I think of a scar as like you're going through some brambles, or you're going through something and it cuts you as you go past, but you have a scar there, and so you're a bit more resilient in all the quotes, but you do keep going. So anything that we've got a policy about, you could also
But you could also caveat that by saying we actually also have policies, because
we have just in case policies. That's fine. We've never, you know,
and because you have to have policies, because
you have to have policy. And I'm talking myself into I'm just going to stop digging this hole now.
No, I would say no. It's not a hole. I think you're onto something there in terms of like the policies that are quite boring to read, where you're just like, yeah. The ones that are like, just to let you know, this. Definitely this. A specific thing. You're like, okay, that's happened.
So I think viewing them as a scar is one way of looking at them. Viewing them like Chris Johnstone talks about in this quote in the book that says, you see resilience as a pearl, something that's generated for a response to adversity. Each difficult situation you encounter act like the grain of sand in an oyster, provoking you to practice, deepen, and reinforce the skill that builds resilience. Which
love that.
Look, policies are not my favorite thing in the world, but if you see them as pearls of your practice, where you're like, there's a bit of grit, and that's why we have a policy about that, because we have grown, and in this adaptive resilience, we have like grown around it and are now in a better position because we have this pearl and we have this pearl and we have this pearl. So then when people come to see your practice, they see the nice shiny collection of pearls you've got. And that's
love that.
a nice space to be in, and acknowledging that like it's not possible without all those grits. It's not possible without those little...
Yeah, you wouldn't have those pearls. Yeah, pearls is definitely nicer than scars, isn't it? I wanted to talk, this is a bit tangential, surprise. I wanted to talk about neurodivergence, because we haven't talked about that yet. And we've been talking for like quite a long time. We haven't got there yet. Partly because that is another thing that was like, in my brain when you suggested the topic of resilience, because there's been quite a lot of, and I was trying to find the pieces that I've been reading about recently about like neurodivergent authors saying resilience can do one, basically, like we don't want to eat shit. That is not the thing. You need to flipping adapt. Places, situations, systems. Don't expect us to eat all the shit. And I couldn't find who I had read, which is annoying. But
and then you gave up because it was hard.
And then I gave up.
And you couldn't find it.
I got distracted as well. But I was thinking about that as a lens as well that can help oneself or some people in terms of like, I'm finding this thing really hard. That means I'm shit, or that means my brain doesn't work, or that means I'm broken, and trying to see if you could apply that pearl metaphor to that instead, which is really challenging. But whether you could go, okay, hang on a minute, so that time in my life was really hard, or my brain usually finds this thing really tricky, but I have adapted, and that's a pearl. Like I've either managed to do it in a different way, or I've actually gone, no, I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to do something else. And instead of going, look at my collection of fuck ups, to go, look at my lovely collection of pearls, might be a nicer way to look at that for oneself, and also to encourage that mindset in people that we work with, you know?
Oh, definitely. I think, yeah, there's, and I think that would come naturally, not just from that's not wholly just for neurodivergent individuals. That is, I think, a blanket thing that you, if more, like now that I've read this and I have this, and I'm hopefully then going to take this straight away into practice and stuff. And I think about the ways that I might then convey things back to. A lot of this was I thought about, like, because the conversations you have about, I'll get to the end of a sentence. I'm going to give you the first 2/3 of about 8 sentences, and then I realized that I think the times that I talk about resilience the most are conversations with like head teachers, conversations with parents, that there is space for having those conversations with individuals, with participants, and being like, it's hard because I don't do a huge amount of like praise in that way, so I wouldn't necessarily be like, I loved how resilient you were, great try. That's not my vibe. But the time that you do talk about resilience is often when you're doing handovers, if you're doing schoolwork and you're reporting back and being like, how has their resilience grown, and I'm thinking about particularly those like score charty tick box things of like, how has their resilience grown, and having this kind of lens on it to acknowledge back and be like, this is so hard, and over the 6 weeks they've 12 weeks they've kept coming back to this thing, or like, and I was thinking about acknowledging this as a type of resilience in social situations, because again, if we talk about like social resilience, you might talk about somebody like eating shit, basically being like, do you know what, they really weren't getting on with that person, but they didn't leave, they were resilient and they stayed there, they were fucking eating shit, or like there was a disagreement about what was going on and they were all very resilient, they all stayed. Whereas like you said a little while ago about saying if somebody was like, they just go emotionally, they're like, physically I need to take myself away because this is too much, and then they might come back and talk to that person later in the day, or they might then talk to that person, if that happened a few times in the day, if somebody had like a pair of people, if they kept falling out, coming back together, falling out, coming back together, you might, my default would be to phrase that as like, well, that's a very fractious relationship, isn't it? That's on tenterhooks. That's very precarious. Whereas actually, is it equally valid for me to look at it and go, that's very resilient, isn't it? They really want to have a friendship there, and it keeps falling apart, but they also keep coming back to it. Isn't that resilient? Isn't that a resilient friendship that can take the,
Yeah,
acknowledging
totally.
that socially is very important, I think.
Definitely. That made me think of another sort of question I had about, especially this adaptive resilience, and it kind of fits well with that social example you just gave. And I wondered what you thought about, I've just made up this idea of maladaptive resilience, which, do you think it's possible to be maladaptively resilient, which is basically another way of saying like sticking with the crap, but like strategies that we might develop in response to trauma or adverse conditions that actually either only serve ourselves or actually don't serve us at all? Do you know what I mean?
Keep saying things because I'm enjoying it, but I need to hear
for
more.
example, like in a social situation, somebody keeps on making somebody else feel really bad, and or does something that is very detrimental to that other person, and the way that the victim in inverted commas of that situation deals with that is a strategy to deal with it, but it's not positive in a way that it might be they continue taking that from that person and then they take it all out on somebody else over there, or when they get home, and that's their strategy, and it works because it does work. Like, it enables them to carry on going because they offload their emotional overburden onto another person, but it's not really ideal. Do you see what I mean? And I mean, in The Body Keeps the Score, what's his chops, the author of that book, who I can't remember right now, talks about,
is it Monbiot?
No, it'll come to me. Anyway, he talks about how things like alcohol and drug abuse, self-harm,
the strategies for resilience.
Exactly. They are strategies for resilience. He says if you're experiencing these things, you have to not be too hard on yourself because they were a strategy that worked at a time.
But
the alcohol or drug abuse numbed you to the situation that you were in so that you could carry on living. It was like it's like an instinctive. So how do we, as space holders, education practitioners, if this is a thing, then how do we spot that compared to actual healthy, in inverted commas, resilience?
Well, so I suppose, hot take, because I'm taking this and processing at the same time, would be that I think there's something in there about taking it back to the definition that we got to at the start, which is that like being resilient involves being knocked down and coming back from that. And the strategy of like eat, and then go take it out on someone else, or, coping with, in other examples, drugs and alcohol, or, things like that. I would say those fall into the category of that original definition of resilience, which is like just being able to shrug things off. They're not taking the low and bouncing. Do you know what I mean? Is there, maybe I've misunderstood your take there.
I think you're right there.
There's something about you want to watch someone bounce. If you're looking for that thing and going, you're not bouncing and coming back to this or coming back to it in a different way, you are, it's like linear.
You're white knuckling it. You're hanging on until you burn out.
Yes. Whereas someone who is resilient might go sooner. They might walk away from situations sooner. They might cry faster. They might do, and that is that is not perseverance, but that is resilience. And that those strategies that you're talking about are actually perseverance strategies.
Yeah. I think you're right. And I think if you're talking about things like you know, school attendance and school anxiety and school trauma, for example,
Yeah.
then, you know, that
Oh my
being
God,
sensitive
school
to the
attendance.
difference.
How would you, how incredibly different would that look if you took school attendance and didn't hand out awards for the numbers of days, but at the end made a big point about like, this person was ill so many times over the year and they kept coming back to school, even though it was a challenge, even though they kept then getting knocked back. That's a way different narrative to like, Simon has never missed a day in year 4, and has, like we said, has been very perseverant, has persevered, but maybe that's not resilience. That's not the...
Yeah, it's like that. Those maladaptive strategies work, in inverted commas, but not infinitely. They're not sustainable. You're on a downward trajectory, even if it takes years. And that's, I guess, the measure of it. That actually, are we able to see, like, again, current educational culture wants us to see a thing like what you're talking about that schemes of work and teacher training about oh, this learning skill. Current educational culture wants to see change and progress in those ways within one lesson, and then flipping 45 minutes a lot of the time. So can you measure, is it the actual, we can measure resilience, but only over a much longer time period? Because how are we meant to know if somebody is truly bouncing, is truly demonstrating one of these things?
Yeah, I think definitely. And there's, so many thoughts. There's, again, isn't there, that thing of like, by this definition, is inconvenient because you would have to allow space for the drop before the bounce back, and that is inconvenient if you are in a system that needs progress in 45 minutes, that needs like, hey, you got to be back in because this is the only time we're doing this thing in maths, we're not covering it again tomorrow. That stuff doesn't have space to allow for resilience. It would like perseverance, please. But there's also something in there that I wondered, which is like, over time is also, I mean, and we did an episode, it was a little while ago now, about consistency, and consistency maybe not being a realistic thing. And that ties in hugely to this idea of like resilience and bouncing back and whatever else. And I think there's also something that Forest School has access to that not many other pedagogies, I don't think, have access to, which is that ability for leaders to be transparent about their own resiliency, modeling, like, as long as you've got, you know, like you were saying before about that thing of, and this is, oh God, okay, here's all the start of the sentences, I'll get there. It's like starting a lawnmower. I have to go, and then the last one goes, here's all the thoughts. So like,
1 second.
So teaching's got that thing of like putting on the mask and putting on the like, here I am, and being consistent, which then means if you are being consistent, you can't model resilience because you can't model that like, this has really hurt me and I'm coming back. Equally, I think if your setting, even in a Forest School setting, is one person, like one facilitator, one leader, one whatever, I think you're then more precarious to model resilience, because if you go down, the group needs to, then you're asking all those participants to accommodate you while you go down and then bounce. Whereas if you've got multiple leaders, multiple volunteers, multiple facilitators, whatever it is, you've got so much more space to go, do you know what, that I'm actually really frustrated that hasn't come off the way I wanted it to. I was trying to make that painting, or I was trying to do whatever, and I need to go and take a minute. And you can do that if you've got lots of adults, because that community can then be resilient because it can accommodate the bounce back.
I have a question about that, and it probably should be the last question because we've like this is a mega ramble, man. Can I formulate it? Okay, so what about the thought? So you saying that about like, oh, if you've got more adults, more facilitators, then you can do the resilient thing as an adult. Do you think they have to be adults, or do you think, and what I don't want people to think whilst hearing this is, it's fine. You just put loads of responsibility and emotional labor onto the kids, and that's just fine. Just do that. I don't mean that. I still accept we are the facilitators, we're the adults, we're the space holders. It's our responsibility. However, I think there is a thing about the type of community you've set up, in that if you have set up a space in which you, as either a single adult or a small team of adults, are the person who does everything, the person who imparts the knowledge, the person who sets up every activity,
you're the only person that can be learned
all
from.
of the time.
Yeah.
You are the king or queen of that flipping world, and everyone just is like, "What?" and you're amazing. Then resilience is going to be really, really hard for you in that situation. As you say, if you go down, like there's nothing, like everyone's looking to you like, what are we going to do now? You can't have that space to be down and then bounce back. But if you view, or if you've got your community to a point where actually the hierarchy is flatter, people are engaging with the space and with each other in a much less hierarchical way, then actually it doesn't necessarily need to be adults and like a team of adults to be able to hold that space for resilience. And I think that comes down to planning and relationships and things like that, because I would say that there have definitely been days where the space that you and I might have held, in the past would have been like, yeah, we're in charge and everyone's looking to us. Like, there are definitely in days like that early on. And then in later days, it's more like, we're there for health and safety, and we're there, but we're there for also just chatting. And also, the person to the other side of that kid is also available for chatting. And that's what we were doing right then. So therefore, there is the time. Do you see what I'm trying to say? I think there is value in that latter community in terms of building that resilience, that again, it's sustainability and it's structural, so that, one of the things is bouncing back, bouncing with, bouncing forward, bouncing outwards, like spreading resilience. And I kind of feel like in a less hierarchical structure, I'm hoping that that's where you're getting to, that spreading of resilience, so that you're modeling it, you're demonstrating it. It's the same for everybody. It's not like, oh, that person has more allowance to be resilient than this person. Again, acknowledging that you're the adult, they're the children, they're learning, but that everyone is allowed to have that time.
Yes.
That's all I've got to say about that.
Yes, I understand entirely what I think that makes complete sense. I think you're right that the more the hierarchy is flattened out, the more equal the opportunities are to demonstrate resilience. I think it's that thing of, in terms of like, sometimes we've had those moments where you're like, I'm going to consciously model what I'm feeling, and maybe even slightly amplify it, or like you're presenting like a manicured version of it slightly, to be like, this is a teachable moment. Yes, I am feeling annoyed that someone's hit me in the shins, but I'm going to present that in a palatable way so that I can model and do whatever else. And that, I think there's an element where if you don't have a flattened hierarchy, if you've got this like, okay, everything sits with me, maybe you're one adult and you're out on the school grounds with like 5, let's say 10 kids, right? You've taken that. If you then were like consciously like, something's not gone well, I haven't been able to light the fire, and you're like, this is a teachable moment where I can model some resilience, and I am maybe gonna, like, it's still slightly character-y, but I'm gonna talk about how annoyed and frustrated I am, and then I'm gonna talk about the things that I'm gonna do to bring myself back. And you get 10 seconds into your talking about how sad you are and how frustrated you're feeling, and then somebody else starts to climb a tree that's too high, you have to switch into perseverance mode, because and that takes away your opportunity for modeling the resilience, because you've got to do the thing. Whereas if what I mean by having more adults is that you've then got space to stay in your resilience modeling, because someone else can give you the space to be there. And that's, I think, a big part of like acknowledging that the resilience bit of it is, and I know we've been talking about this all the way through, that it's not like shrugging things off, but you need a support network to hold space for you, whether you're a participant, whether you're a leader, whether you're doing whatever. If you want to practice resilience, you also are asking a support network to hold things for you. It's a bit like carrying a image in my head is like, like a waiter carrying a tray of drinks, but they know they're going to pass out that for a second, and somebody else can come in and just hold that tray for you, and you can go, oh, thank you very much, kadoosh, and then get back up and go, okay, I'm ready and I'm back, pass me the tray of drinks, please. But if you don't have a support network and you try and you have no option but to be knocked, it's harder to be resilient, because then you've got to pick all the drinks up, you've got to do all the things, it's very beneficial to have a support network that can hold those things while you go kadoosh and then come back up. Yes. I think, and that's one thing that we can then do for each other and do in Forest School for participants, is going, okay, what can I hold for you metaphorically? What can I hold for you while you go through this, dip that will allow your bounce to be, freer. Something like that. Yeah. Some words like that. Put them in like a real
your pearl
prophetic.
To be shinier.
Yeah, you got to work on that pearl, man. You got to work on it. It's rare that 2 or 3 pages of a book have this much of an impact on like full just like concept that's going through that I have talked about hundreds of times. Probably talked about resilience and never thought of it in this way. If you've enjoyed this, listeners, please strap in for when we talk about the entire book, because oh my god, that's too.
Maybe that's not possible.
That's 3 pages in a 300-page book. We are going to be. We're just.
And this isn't even Looby's most recent book, right?
No, I have
There's
it.
a new one.
Hang on.
Have you got the new one too?
It was slightly out of reach.
Building or something.
I have this one. Design Adventures. So Looby's come from the permaculture world. And so this is like an extension of some of the stuff that's in cultural emergence. It's all about designing systems. I'm giving myself a break to be resilient from the first book, because it's slightly knocked me. And I know that going straight into this would be perseverance.
Oh my God. Can I show you what I'm reading? Which is not 300 pages. Actually, it might be 300 pages, but it's 145 pages. Have you seen this?
Pedagogy of the Oppressed. I have seen it. I've seen it. I've seen it. I haven't read it on purpose. Should I read it?
Amazing. Maybe give yourself a bit of a break between.
Maybe not this month. We talked about it. It's quite a busy month.
Not that month. Holy mackerel.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, it's really good.
Oh, incredible. Anyway, I will see you. I'll see you in person, like at some point very soon for our secret embargoed meeting.
I look forward to the outfit.
Yes. Lush, mate.
All right. Bye. Bye, listeners. Bye.